Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. Post-debate show. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. We've got John Nichols on. He's going to break down the state of play in the battleground state of Wisconsin. We have David Sirota on to break down the healthcare portion of the debate last night, which was very annoying all the way around, let's just say. We also have the panel to make sense of the debate last night and where things go from here. And that is, in fact, where we wanted to start, Saagar.
Yeah, so we got some post-debate polling. Now, usually, look, take this all with a grain of salt. You know, these things are usually snap polls, whatever. So they say Biden, YouGov says plus 19. I think that's an online poll. Plus 14 for CNN. Plus 11 for Biden. Look, I can't help but say that the CNN and the Data for Progress poll also roughly account for vote totals on the national polls.
That's what I noticed right away, too. It looks like the national vote total. So it's like, if you liked Biden, you liked Biden. If you liked Trump, you liked Trump.
I thought Trump did quite well. I thought it was probably his best debate probably ever, even against Hillary Clinton. Now, look, I don't think all of it matters. And as I said here a lot of times, political science research shows that even in the best of times, that these debates do not matter. They have almost no deterministic effect on the U.S. election. And think about COVID times, when how many people have even voted already? Like millions.
40 million, I think is the number I saw.
Tens of millions of people have already voted before this debate even happened. People are more polarized and locked into their votes than ever before. The slice of the undecided election is probably smaller than it's been in decades in American politics. So I think that these things don't matter electorally. They always are signals on substance. And they tell us broader things about each other's campaign. I thought they both did quite well. I also thought it was probably Biden's best debate of this entire year of 2020. And look, when you're up, 10 points, that's pretty much what you need. Everyone was like, Trump needs to shake things up. I don't think he can. I don't think it's possible in a debate outside of Biden himself just like collapsing on the stage. Maybe that would do something. But outside of that, I thought they both did quite well. They both faltered and had, slip-ups. But overall, it was fine. It was a little bit more of a return to normal, which was nice. So, that's all that really is.
Certainly on the theater, it was a much more watchable debate than the first one, where afterwards you were like so angry and anxious from just like, make it stop. I couldn't sleep for like 3 hours after the debate ended because I was so agitated. Last night, there was actual substantive exchange. They made that change to the mics where they were muted during the first opening 2 minutes. Right. But I think even without that, clearly, even Trump had recognized that first debate was a freaking disaster for him. And it was. We talk about how these debates don't really matter that much electorally, but that first debate was kind of the last minute when people were like, okay, what am I doing here? And when they watched Trump be so obnoxious for 90 minutes, they were like, we're done here. Like, I just don't want to see this guy in my life anymore. And you did see a drop in the polls for him after that first debate. So I will certainly give him the most improved award for his performance last night. You could visually see him trying to restrain himself.
Yeah.
He even went out of his way to compliment Kristen Welker.
I know, yeah.
He was like criticizing her, but he was like, I hope you ask a question about, I don't remember what it was. Right. He's like, but I want to say you're doing a great job. I'm like, what is going on here? Even he would stop himself from interrupting Joe Biden. Clearly he was really, really trying to restrain himself. And I have to say, look, if we saw a little bit more of that Trump, especially during this era of chaos and uncertainty when people really wanted to see a sort of normal leader and the ability to take control, I think he'd be in a better position now. Even if you forget about the substance, we're going to talk about some of the substance in just a minute. Just having that affect, I think, would have turned off a lot fewer suburban women, for example. Maybe some seniors would have stayed in your camp. Just changing the tone and tenor, I think, would have made a difference for him. Overall, I would say I agree with you. I thought Joe Biden had his strongest debate that he's had. We've talked before about his one-on-one versus Bernie, where he was pretty effective. I thought he was even more cogent and forceful and clear last night, especially in the first hour of the debate.
He starts to fade out.
Then the latter 30 minutes, it got a little bit, it was time to go to bed, probably for both of them, honestly. But the first hour and his responses on coronavirus were very crisp and very clear, and I thought really landed. And look, I think both of us feel like, honestly, this race was kind of lost by Trump back in February and March when he didn't take COVID seriously, when he set himself on this track that he's fully embraced now of sort of ambivalent towards masks. He'll be like, sure, people should wear masks, but not really embracing that. arguing for reopening, forcefully bringing in the herd immunity guy, trying to downplay it at all times and in all ways. I think the cake has been baked for a long time, frankly, and that was evident in their answers last night.
It was. I know, and I say this every time, I know a lot of people on the right don't want to hear this, but look, the Trump message on coronavirus is dramatically out of step with public opinion. It's just true. The latest New York Times Siena poll on this said that the plurality of the American public, almost half, the majority of like any one group, says the worst is yet to come.
Yes.
People are feeling like pretty apocalyptic about this.
Yeah.
You can argue about whether they should or not and all of that, but here's the other problem. Trump is trying to use his position as president to change public opinion. Well, his downplaying of the virus in March and April actually lost his trust with the public opinion, who distrust him on everything coronavirus.
That's right.
So he can't move public opinion in the way that he wants it to go. So now, even if you accept that view, it is not popular and they don't trust it. And that's a huge electoral liability for him.
That's really true. So now when he says, we've turned the corner, the worst is behind us, we've got this under control, we need to open the schools. By the way, I actually think, based on the data that we're seeing,
we should open schools.
Especially elementary schools should be open. But you're right. We've heard this all before, and people don't trust him. Not only have we heard this before, we heard him saying to the public, it's just like the flu, it'll be gone by the spring, don't worry about it, while he's privately telling Bob Woodward, this is deadly, and it's terrible, and it impacts everyone, and it's much, much worse than the flu. So in terms of their responses last night, look, again, I thought both of them were calm and articulate and coherent in their responses. I just think Biden is dramatically more on the correct side of public opinion on the substance of what he's arguing for here. Let's take a listen to both of them.
We have a vaccine that's coming. It's ready. It's going to be announced within weeks, and it's going to be delivered. We have Operation Warp Speed, which is the military is going to distribute the vaccine. I can tell you from personal experience that I was in the hospital. I had it. And I got better, and I will tell you that I had something that they gave me, a therapeutic, I guess they would call it. Some people could say it was a cure. But I was in for a short period of time, and I got better very fast, or I wouldn't be here tonight. And now they say I'm immune. Whether it's 4 months or a lifetime, nobody's been able to say that, but I'm immune. More and more people are getting better. We have a problem that's a worldwide problem. This is a worldwide problem. But I've been congratulated by the heads of many countries on what we've been able to do. If you take a look at what we've done in terms of goggles and masks and gowns and everything else, and in particular ventilators, we're now making ventilators all over the world, thousands and thousands a month, distributing them all over the world. It will go away, and as I say, we're rounding the turn, we're rounding the corner. It's going away.
220,000 Americans dead. If you hear nothing else I say tonight, hear this. Anyone who's responsible for not taking control, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially, anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America. What I would do is make sure we have everyone encouraged to wear a mask all the time. I would make sure we move in the direction of rapid testing, investing in rapid testing. I would make sure that we set up national standards as to how to open up schools and open up businesses so they can be safe, and give them the wherewithal, the financial resources to be able to do that. And so, folks, I will take care of this. I will end this. I will make sure we have a plan.
There was also a very Trumpian moment where, there's an exchange about whether he took responsibility. He's like, I take full responsibility. And then the very next breath, he's like, it's China's fault. There was also an exchange where Trump said, look, we're learning to live with it. And Joe sees that moment to be like, no, actually, a lot of people are dying from it and waking up in bed without that loved one next to them. And emotionally, that's where the American people are.
Yeah, that's just true.
They're,
I mean, look, that is where they are.
They're feeling this very heavily.
Yeah, and I think people need to understand that, which is people don't feel safe about the virus. And everyone's like, well, they need to be educated and all that. Fine. But then you have to have the trust with them in order to educate them. And Trump and the administration just do not have that trust. And this is another area where I think in general his instincts are just very askew from where they were in 2016. You really saw that. I mean, he had two It's funny because he has some of the original energy, which will play, but then some where he's just almost completely straight. I mean, his answer on the minimum wage was straight out of Mitt Romney. I mean, basically, let's take a listen to that.
But I want to get your
we have to help our
reaction.
small businesses by raising the minimum wage. That's not helping. I think it should be a state option. Alabama is different than New York. New York is different from Vermont. Every state is different. It should be a state option.
You said very
we have
recently.
to help. It's very important. We have to help our small businesses.
You
How
said-
are you helping your small businesses when you're forcing wages? What's going to happen, and what's been proven to happen, is when you do that, these small businesses fire many of their employees.
You said very
Not true,
recently you would
by the way.
consider raising the federal
Say
minimum
it.
wage to $15
Say
an
it.
hour. You said recently you would consider raising the federal minimum wage to $15
What I
an
really
hour. Is that
like-
still the case?
And I would consider it to an extent, but
In a
what I
second
really like,
administration?
in a second administration, but not to a level that's going to put all these businesses out of business. It should be a state option. Look, I've lived in different places. I know different places. They're all different. Some places, $15 is not so bad. In other places, other states, $15 would be
Okay, President
ruinous.
Trump, thank you. Quick response, Vice President Biden.
2 jobs, 1 job, be below poverty. People are making $6, $7, $8 an hour. These first responders, we all clap for as they come down the street because they've allowed us to make it. What's happening? They deserve a minimum wage of $15. Anything below that puts you below the poverty level.
And so just to be really clear here, when you say it should be a state option, that means you don't really support a federal minimum
And
wage
actually,
or
Trump
certainly
did
increasing
support,
it.
in 2016, repeatedly federal minimum wage. And again, look, even I can deliver even if you don't respond, he'd be like, you talk about immigration, tight labor markets. We actually had rising wages in this country in 2018, 2019, all true because of lower levels of immigration. So there you go. I can even give that answer for you, but he didn't. He gave the Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan case against the federal minimum wage.
This moment really stood out to me because he's allowed Joe Biden to occupy the populist lane.
Yeah, that's what Andrew Sullivan said yesterday.
Former senator from MBNA is the populist in the race just from supporting something like a $15 minimum wage, lifting the minimum wage at all. And that was what really, on the substance here, that was what really stuck with me is I can't think of any of his answers last night on this. I mean, obviously, stylistically, he's wildly different than Mitt Romney or anyone else who came before. But in terms of the direction of his answers, they all could have been standard issue Republican playbook. And this one, to me, really stood out. Now, of course, look, he's been in office for a long time. If he wanted to lift the minimum wage, he could have done that. So we already knew that he didn't really support lifting the minimum wage. But this is a polar opposite of where he was back in 2016, which was a large part of why he was able to win.
And the one tinge of the energy that I saw was the best attack he had against Hillary Clinton, and it was still the best one he has against Joe Biden. Let's take a listen to that one.
But why didn't he do it 4 years ago? Why didn't you do that 4 years ago, even less than that? Why didn't you do it? You were vice president. You keep talking about all these things you're going to do and you're going to do this, but you were there just a short time ago and you guys did nothing.
He's right. I mean, and that was his, I remember those with Hillary. They were the most devastating bars because she was like, oh, this, they're always like making excuses. And at the end of the day, it is true. I mean, look, they didn't do a lot of what they promised. Biden has been in office for almost 50-something plus years.
And 47, I think.
Yes, 47 years, right? I mean, that's a long time.
It's a long friggin' time.
And you think about what what his actual record from that time has been. That's always the great divide for me, which is that the core argument against Biden was right there. And it's what you saw so much more of in 2016 about China, about NAFTA, about immigration. I mean, I didn't hear Trump even go after Biden on Iraq. I mean, where was that? It was totally missing.
Yeah.
And sure, some of that's on the moderator. She didn't even ask about Afghanistan in the foreign policy debate. That means we'll have an entire electoral cycle and Joe Biden gets to skate, all the way into the end and we don't even know where he goes on Afghanistan. And I think that's a problem.
And he went to the right of Trump on North Korea, which also sucked.
Yeah,
there were a lot of, there were plenty of
Yeah.
substantive issues I had with Joe Biden in this. But yeah, if Trump had just fixated on this attack against Joe Biden for the entirety of this campaign, he would be in a better position. I don't know that he'd be in a position to win just because of his handling of COVID and how atrocious it's been and how dramatically out of step he is on that.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be like this.
But Joe Biden's, I can't say this enough, his favorabilities have gone up in part because Trump's attacks on him about the radical Marxist, Trojan horse, et cetera, just don't land whatsoever. He's actually made Joe Biden more popular. So what I saw there, and he went back to that theme a few times about like, look, you had 47 years. Why didn't you get it done then?
Yes.
You've been here for decades. You had 8 years in the Obama White House. Why didn't you get it done? It is an effective message. I mean, you could turn around and say to Trump, like, well, you're in the White House now. You could get these things done as we speak. But it was a much more effective attack on Joe Biden. The last thing we wanted to show you is another theme that we've been talking about here is how Trump has left wide open just the most basic, easy, obvious, American, patriotic, standard issue political rhetoric. Joe Biden took advantage of that to deliver a unifying message that I thought, look, it's a little hokey, but it landed last night.
And I don't look at this in terms of the way he does. Blue states and red states. They're all the United States. And look at the states that are having such a spike in the coronavirus. They're the red states. They're the states in the Midwest. They're the states in the upper Midwest. That's where the spike is occurring significantly. But they're all Americans. They're all Americans. And what we have to do is say, wear these masks, number one. Make sure we get the help that the businesses need that has money's already been passed to do that. It's been out there since the beginning of the summer, and nothing's happened.
It's very standard.
Very standard language, but that stuff works. I've always said this.
Especially right now.
Talking about badly run Democrat cities, look, that can both be true, but you're still president of the whole country. And I think that always, if you're a real nationalist, that's kind of the way that you have to think, operate, especially in terms of policy and more. So
True.
I think that's always been a missing thing for Trump and Biden, bringing that. It's funny because he was like, I don't think red states and blue states, but the red states are the ones doing worse in coronavirus. And you're like, wait, what? I mean, that's contradictory. But it doesn't matter because the very basic language is actually something that a lot of people just find very comforting.
Especially right now when we all feel like the country's being torn apart and ripped asunder. Look, overall, much closer match than the first one when I think Trump overwhelmingly blew himself up. I mean, he didn't even lose. He blew himself up, so this is much closer match. But that means that you got to give the win to Biden because he's the leader in this race by something like 10 points nationally. He got the edge in all the battleground states. Trump needed to make something happen. He hung in there. He did himself some favors, but he did not fundamentally change any of the game here. So I think you got to give the win to Biden. All right, coming up on Rising Battlegrounds breaks down the presidential race in the swing state of Wisconsin with journalist John Nichols. That's next.